Hey, what's up guys? This is the Algebra 1 Spring Final Review year 2022 and it is the third video. So I'm going to start with question number 21. I do have two videos that you guys can watch so you can look at questions 1 through 20. But for this video, part 3, we're going to start with question 21. So let's go and look at that question. And the question says, solve, you have a quadratic trinomial a squared plus 4a minus 21 equal to 0. Notice that it says solve, so you need to understand, you need to know what that word means. Solving means you are looking for the value of the variable. We do have an equal sign, so we have an equation, and we have a quadratic equation degree of 2. So there's a couple ways you guys can solve that I show you guys in class. One of them is solving by factoring. The other one is solving by using the quadratic formula. You guys can use either one, but if you cannot factor, you will have to use a quadratic formula no matter what. Now this one, I believe we can factor, so I'm going to use that method. And if you guys can factor, it's going to be a little bit faster than the quadratic formula. So if you can factor, I do recommend to factor. So to factor, I'm going to use the X diagram. I'm going to multiply the a value, which is the number in front of the variable with the square. And I'm going to multiply the a value times the c value, which is the constant. So 1 times negative 21 is negative 21. So let me just put up here a times c, that's what you multiply. And the b, which is the term with the a exponent of 1, b is positive 4. So I'm going to put a 4 on the bottom right there. So we need to find two factors that multiply to negative 21 and they add up to 4. And I am thinking of positive 7 and negative 3. Now if you guys, I did mention this in my previous videos, if you guys cannot find the factors, the two numbers the first time, don't give up, try again and again until you guys find those factors. So this one, when you multiply 7 times negative 3 is negative 21 and 7 minus 3 is positive 4. So we can, yes, we can factor because the X diagram works. The next step, you guys are going to have your two binomials. Notice I'm using two parentheses, equal to 0. Every time you guys want to solve a quadratic equation, you must have a 0 on one side of that equation. So you must have equal to 0. I'm going to write down my binomials. So the a value is 1. So I'm going to bring down the 1a over here. Your factors, it's a positive 7, so you bring down the plus 7 here, and a negative 3, you guys bring down the minus 3 over here. Now we're not done because this is only factoring. Now we need to solve, and that's what we want. We want to solve the quadratic equation. So the next step is we are going to use the zero product property to solve for a. Notice we have 1a here and the 1a over here. So you're going to take each parenthesis, each factor. So I'm going to take this binomial. I don't need that 1 next to the a, but I'm going to take the a, just the a, plus 7, equal that to 0. And I'm going to take the second binomial, the second factor, a minus 3 equal to 0. I don't need that 1 next to the a, remember? So I just bring down the a. Now you guys can solve. You guys will have two answers. So for the first one, you subtract 7 from both sides. So a equals negative 7. And the second one, you guys add 3. So a equals positive 3. So my two answers, we do have two real solutions. They are negative 7, comma, positive 3. The order doesn't matter, guys, when you guys find those answers. But make sure that you do have a negative 7 and a positive 3. They're both x values, or in this case it's a. They're both a values. So you guys have two real solutions for this quadratic equation. So for 22, same thing. You guys want to solve a quadratic. There's a degree of 2 quadratic equation. And we do have an equal to 0. So that's what we need every time we want to solve. So like I said, you guys can factor, or you guys can use a quadratic formula to solve the quadratic equation. I'm going to factor, so I'm going to use the X diagram right now. I'm going to multiply the a value, which is 2 times the c value, which is negative 35, and that's going to be negative 70. The b term is negative 3, that's the one with the x, so there's a negative 3 right there. So I need to find two factors that multiply to negative 70 and they add up to negative 3. Notice we do have a negative, so one of those numbers has to be negative, and the biggest number has to be negative because we need a negative 3. Now, this is where you guys can make a list. You guys can check your factors and just try. Don't give up, but you guys need to find those two numbers that multiply to negative 70 and add up to negative 3. So I always start with the 1 times the negative 70. I know it's not going to work, but I always do that. So that doesn't work right there. It's not going to give me negative 3. 2 times negative 35, that's not going to give me negative 3. So I put that away. You guys can check 3, if 3 goes into it. So 3 doesn't go into 70, so you guys can skip that right there. What about 4? 4 times, so 4 doesn't go into negative 70. You guys can try 5 times negative, it's going to be negative 14. And you guys can say this is not going to work because it's not going to give me negative 3, so that doesn't work. You guys can try the 6. Well, 6 doesn't go into 70, that doesn't work. 7 times negative 10. Look at that, guys. So notice what I did right now. I made a list of factors. I just checked which numbers go into negative 70, and we found that these two factors, 7 times negative 70, actually works. You guys can multiply those two, positive 7 times negative 10, and that's going to give me negative 70, and 7 minus 10 will give me negative 3. So you guys can factor. Now you guys write your two binomials, and you equal that to 0. Now be careful, because the a value is not 1. You go back to the trinomial, it is a 2. So I'm going to bring down the 2x here, 2x over here. You guys bring down your factors, the positive 7 and the negative 3 minus, sorry, not negative 3, minus 10, negative 10. So you guys bring down the negative 10, and then you guys check if you can divide the binomials. You reduce. So notice, I cannot reduce this one, but I can divide by 2 in the second binomial. So I am going to divide by 2, divide by 2. So I'm going to have 2x plus 7 times 1x, or just x, minus 5. 10 divided by 2 is 5, equal to 0. And now you guys can solve. So we're going to use the zero product property. So I'm going to take the first parentheses, 2x plus 7, 2x plus 7 equal to 0. And the second parentheses, x minus 5 equal to 0. And you guys solve for the x value. So I'm going to go back to the first equation. Let me just make a little bit more space over here. So I'm going to move this up. And we do have, you subtract 7 from both sides. And then you guys will get 2x, this cancels, equals negative 7. And then you guys divide by 2. So x equals negative 7 over 2. You keep it as a fraction. We don't need decimals, just an improper fraction. If you can reduce the fraction, go ahead and reduce. But this one you cannot. And for the second equation, you guys add 5 to both sides. So x equals 5. So my two answers, my solutions, are negative 7 over 2 and positive 5. Question 23 says simplify the expression. Notice we don't have a quadratic equation anymore, but this is actually using the properties of exponents. So we are changing the concept a little bit. We are going to use those properties to simplify the expression. So we have 7x cubed, that's an exponent of 3, times x cubed. And you guys can say we have a 1, invisible 1 next to the x right here. But you guys are multiplying. So the first thing is you will multiply the coefficients, the numbers in front of the variable. 7 times 1, and that's going to be 7. And for the variables, when you guys are multiplying the same bases, this is the properties of exponents. When you multiply, you add the exponents. You keep the base, so I'm going to keep the x here, and I'm going to add the exponents, 3 plus 3. So you guys will have a 7x to the 6th power. For 24, well, you guys have a negative exponent, 6 to the negative 2nd power. We need to get rid of that negative exponent. To do that, we're going to make a fraction. So I'm going to put here equals a fraction. And whatever has a negative exponent, I'm going to take it to the bottom, to the other side of the fraction. Now, I'm saying the other side because this 6 to the negative 2, you can actually make it a fraction. You can put a 1 under the 6. So notice the 6 is on the top. So I'm going to take it to the bottom of the fraction, the other side of the fraction, and I'm going to make the exponent positive. So you guys have the 6 on the bottom, exponent becomes positive 2, and on the top, you guys are going to have a 1. Since you don't have anything else, notice when you move the 6 to the bottom, you don't have anything else, you guys need a 1. You need to put a 1 on top. Now you guys can simplify the bottom of the fraction. 6 squared, that's going to be 6 times 6. So I'm going to have 1 over 36, and that is your answer. Number 25, you guys have a fraction. You want to simplify a to the 7th power times b to the 3rd divided by a to the 2nd power times b to the 8th. Now when you guys are dividing, there's the division line right here. When you're dividing the same bases, you guys are going to subtract the exponents, and you guys are going to keep the base where the highest exponent is at. So first, let's look at the a's. A to the 7th over a squared. Well, the highest exponent is on the top of the fraction, so I'm going to keep the a on the top, and I'm going to subtract the exponent, 7 minus 2. So I'm going to put that right here, so you guys remember that you guys are going to subtract. And the b, now I'm looking at the b's right here. Well, the highest exponent is on the bottom. There's the 8, exponent of 8. That's the highest one for the b. So I'm going to keep the b on the bottom, and I'm going to subtract 8 minus 3. Highest exponent minus the lowest exponent. So on the top, I'm going to have a to the 5th power, and on the bottom, b to the 5th power. Now these two, a to the 5th over b to the 5th, they're not the same base. So you guys cannot do anything else. You guys are done. This is your answer. Number 26, we have a to the 7th power, b to the 0, so there's an exponent of 0, and z to the negative exponent of 2. Well, first, we need to get rid of that negative exponent, and we are going to simplify the exponent of 0. For the negative exponent, we are going to make a fraction, so we can move those bases to the other side of the fraction. So I'm going to put a 1 under the expression. Look at the 1 under, okay? So now you guys can see the fraction. I'm going to take this z to the negative 2nd power to the bottom of the fraction. That's what you do. You take it to the other side of the fraction. And the a will stay on the top, but the b has an exponent of 0. So anything with an exponent of 0 other than 0, okay? If you guys have something else than 0, or a variable to the 0 exponent, that's going to turn into a 1. Okay, anything to the 0 power is 1. And like I said, anything other than 0. So you guys are going to have on the top the a to the 7th power. I don't need that 1 because the b turned into 1. You can make it invisible. You guys can have the 1 there, so I don't need it. But the z, remember, we need to take it to the bottom of the fraction. Z and the exponent becomes positive, z squared. Now look at the bases. Right now, the variables are not the same. In that fraction, we have an a on the top, z on the bottom. You cannot do anything else. So the answer is a to the 7th over z squared. For number 27, again, you guys have an expression with the fraction m to the 5th power times p to the negative, so there's a negative exponent squared, over m to the negative 6 on the bottom, and you guys have the t to the 4th. Well, first of all, we need to move those negative exponents to the other side of the fraction. So I'm going to take this one, m to the negative 6, that's on the bottom. I'm going to move that to the top, And this one here, p to the negative 2, and I'm going to move it to the bottom of the fraction. You move those negative exponents to the other side of the fraction. So I'm going to make my fraction line right here. This m right there with the fifth power stays on the top. It doesn't have a negative exponent, so you guys keep it on the top of the fraction. But we are going to take this to the top, and the exponent becomes positive. So you guys are going to have m to the sixth power. Then on the bottom, you already have a p to the fourth, and that one stays on the bottom because it is a positive exponent, so just keep it on the bottom. And this one, p to the negative second, goes to the bottom, p squared. It becomes positive exponent. Now when you guys have those variables on the same side of the fraction, you guys are actually multiplying the same basis. There's a times in between. It's invisible, but by default, they're multiplying. So when you're multiplying the same basis, you need to add the exponents. On the bottom, we also have the same basis, the letter p. So you guys are going to add the exponents. So you guys are going to have your fraction line. There's my base of m. And you guys are going to add 5 plus 6. That will be 11. On the bottom, you guys keep the p. And you guys are going to add 4 plus 2 is 6. So my answer is m to the 11th power over p to the 6th. 28 says solve using the quadratic formula. So here they give us special instructions. Quadratic formula is what we need to solve the quadratic equation. So the quadratic formula, I'm just going to write it down on the side of the screen. So the formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, everything divided by 2a. When you guys are using the quadratic formula, make sure you guys have an equal to 0. Everything's on one side, equal to 0. So I'm going to find those a, the values of a, b, and c. So a is the one with the x squared, so that's 2. B is the one with the x, that's negative 5. And c is negative 12. So I'm going to substitute those values into the formula. So now you guys see that I'm using parentheses, and I did substitute those values. So we have the negative b. Be careful with the signs. Always check, double check your signs. Plus or minus the b squared minus 4 times a times the c value, everything divided by 2 times a. You guys are going to simplify, and you can use a scientific calculator to simplify. But we know that here a negative times a negative 5, that's going to be a positive 5 plus or minus. And I'm going to use the calculator to find the discriminant. The discriminant is the number inside of the radical, but I'll do the bottom first. The bottom, 2 times 2 is 4, but let me use the calculator to find this number inside of the radical. So the discriminant is 121 after I use the calculator to find this value right there. 121 is a perfect square number. This right here, the square root of 121 is 11. So you guys can simplify 5 plus or minus 11. You guys have that perfect square number. I don't need the radical anymore, divided by 4. Since I don't have radicals on the top, I'm going to separate the plus and the minus to make two fractions. So x equals 5 minus 11 over 4. And the second one is going to be 5 plus 11 over 4. You guys keep going. You guys need to simplify the fractions. So x equals 5 minus 11, that's negative 6 over 4. And the second one, 5 plus 11, is 16 over 4. And keep going. You reduce the fraction. So x equals, let me just move this a little bit to the top so you guys can see it better. Negative 6 over 4, that's going to be negative 3 over 2. You guys simplify the fraction. And the second one, 16 divided by 4 is 4. So my two solutions are negative 3 over 2 and 4. 29 says determine the values of a, b, and c for the quadratic equation. So notice, we're not solving, we're not graphing, you're not factoring. We just need to know what are the values of the a, the b, and the c. In order to find those values, make sure the equation, there's the equal sign, make sure the equation has an equal to 0. We don't have one. Right now, it's a 12. So we need to make this 12 to be a 0. So I'm going to subtract 12 to both sides. Make sure you guys check that first. So I'm going to have my 2x squared minus the 7x minus the 12 equal to 0. Now that you guys have equal to 0, you can find the a value, the b, and the c. Now you guys remember, keep in mind, the a value is the one with the x squared. So you guys have a 2. This is my a value. My b value is the one with the x. Sometimes the terms are not in order. So you guys need to make sure the b term is the one with the x. So b is negative 7 and c is your constants. So you guys have a negative 12. Negative 12 doesn't have a variable. That's why it is a constant. But let me emphasize on this, guys. If the order is not in standard form, so if these terms are not in order, make sure you guys look for the x values, or not the value, the x terms. So the x squared is the a, the regular x, exponent of 1 is b, and the constant will be c, the number with no variable. So that's what they're asking for, a, b, and c. 30 says, use the quadratic formula to find the solutions again. All right, so here we do have y equals, that y, guys, it just means a function. So you have a function of y equals negative x squared minus 3x plus 14. So you guys can turn that y into a 0. So I'm going to put a 0 right there because that's what we need to use the quadratic formula, a 0. So the y becomes a 0. We have a negative x squared minus 3x plus 14. Now you guys can find the a value, b, and c. I just mentioned that in the previous question. You guys need a 0 in that equation to find the a, the b, and the c. So a is negative 1, b is negative 3, and c will be positive 14. I'm going to substitute into the formula, and I am using parentheses when I substitute. Make sure you guys check your signs, make sure you guys check your values. So we have the negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, everything divided by 2a. You guys are going to simplify, and you can use a scientific calculator. So here we have a negative times a negative. That's going to be positive 3 plus or minus. There's the square root. I'll do the bottom first before I use the calculator. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. And let me find the discriminant, which is the one inside of the radical. That number is 65 for the discriminant. So here, this 65 is not a perfect square number. So we actually need to find out if we can factor that 65 or if we can break it down and make pairs. What I'm trying to check is if I can simplify this radical. So I'm going to do that on the side. I'm going to have a 65 here, and I'm going to break it down. So I know that 5 goes into 65 because it has a 5 at the end. So 5 has to go into it. So 5 will be 5 times 13 is 65. Oh, guess what? 5 is prime, 13 is prime. You cannot break down the 13. We don't have pairs. So what it means, you cannot simplify the radical. So my answer is in radical form. That's your answer right here. You cannot simplify the radical. This one doesn't have a radical, so you don't have to separate the plus and the minus. You keep it together, and we do have a negative 2 on the bottom. So my answers, there's 2, is 3 plus or minus the square root of 65 over negative 2. 31 says, solve using the quadratic formula again. So notice that we have the equal sign here, but we don't have equal to 0. We have a 7x squared equals 3 plus 5x. So what I like to do is, I always like to keep the a positive when I have my quadratic trinomial equal to 0. So I'm going to make this side equal to 0 to use the quadratic formula. I'm going to take the 3 to the other side, and I'm going to take this 5x to the other side. So I'm going to do the opposite. Notice I'm going to do minus 3 and minus 5x at the same time. So I don't have to do a lot of steps. On the other side, I'm going to subtract 3 minus 5x. This right here on the left side, we don't have like terms, but I'm going to write it in standard form, in order from highest exponent to the lowest exponent. So 7x squared is first, and then you guys have the minus 5x, and then the constant equal to, cancels, 0. Now you guys can find the a, the b, and the c. So a is 7, b is -5, and c is -3. Remember that you guys need a 0 in order to find the a, the b, and the c. Now I'm going to use the formula. I'm going to substitute those values into the quadratic formula. And you guys see the values in the formula here. Now you guys are going to simplify. Again, you guys can use a calculator, scientific calculator. So the negative times the -5, that's going to be +5, plus or minus. I'll find the discriminant in a second. On the bottom, I know I have a 14. 2 times 7 is 14. And the discriminant is 109. So that's not a perfect square number. You guys need to check if you can simplify. So on the side, let me just move this a little bit to the left. So I'm going to check the 109, and I know that, I'm trying 3. I see the 9 here, but 3 doesn't go into 109. Nope. So I'm not going to do 3. 2, this is not even, so it's not going, 2 doesn't go into 109. 5 doesn't go into it. 10 doesn't go into it. 11 doesn't go into it. 12, nope. So guess what, guys? I believe we cannot break this one down. Yeah, so that's a prime number. So that means your answer, it is in radical form. Right there. 32. It says, use the graph. There is a graph with a parabola to determine the solutions. We are looking for the solutions of that parabola. The solutions are the x-intercepts of the graph, where the graph crosses the x-axis. So the x-axis is this one here, and we know they do cross at 2 different points. So one of the points is this one right there, and the second point is this one right here. So this x value is +4 from the origin, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the second one is +7. That's it. Your solutions are +4 and 7. You just look where the parabola crosses the x-axis. 33. We have two binomials. It says simplify. -5x plus 2 plus 4x plus 5. First of all, you need to look at the sign in the middle. You guys have a plus, so that means you're adding. You guys are adding the two binomials. You're not multiplying, you guys are adding. So when you guys have a plus in the middle, all you have to do is combine like terms. So I'm going to look at the terms that have an x. I see a -5x and a +4x. So you guys combine -5x plus 4x, that's -1x. Then you guys are going to look at the constants. +2 plus a +7, 2 plus, +5. 2 plus 5 is 7. So this one will be -1x plus 7. I don't need that 1 next to the x. So I'm just going to use the negative with the x plus the 7. And that's your answer. So all you have to look at, guys, look in between the parentheses. The plus means you're adding, so you guys are going to combine like terms. -5x plus 4x is -1x, and the 2 plus 5 is +7. So -x plus 7 is your answer. Okay, so we are finished with the final review. I'm not going to make more videos. You guys have 3 videos to watch. The review has questions 1 through 33. So make sure you guys review, make sure you guys practice, and I'll see you guys later.